Here on The Colour of Country Life, good to be catching up again with the member for Mackillop, Nick McBride. How are you going, Nick?
Very good to be with you, Ricky.
Thanks. Look, we wanted to talk first of all about this cross-border commissioner. The press release or material from the state government after this role has passed through the parliament seems to indicate Troy McBell was the one they were very pleased to work with. No mention of the role the opposition played. Can you tell us what the opposition had to do with this cross-border legislation?
Oh, look, in the end, the opposition Liberal Party came in and supported this cross-border commissioner. It did initially roll out some major concerns that we weren't just putting a person in this role that would be another level of bureaucracy, and that's the crux of it. We raised a number of concerns with the minister involved for regional and engagement, which was Claire Scriven, and she's also a primary industries minister, and she's taken control of this cross-border commissioner process and her ministry. And we had a number of issues we raised with her, and we have some confidence with working with Troy Bell on this as well as an independent from Mount Gambier to make sure that the cross-border commissioner that is implemented and its role advocates and actually works for better outcomes along the cross-border. Bearing in mind, Ricky, no matter what happens, this will be another level of bureaucracy. And I'll give you an example. One of the classic really issues along our border is education and school buses and schools. A little town like Francis, between Bordertown and Narracourt, only has now a Victorian bus. This Victorian bus picks up nearly 80% of the students, and it's not full. And it's not allowed to pick up any South Australian students on its way to that school at all. And that the school could do and would do with some more students to keep the numbers up and so that the school remains viable. They're the sort of stupid anomalies that just, for example, happens in education. And then if this doesn't work, Ricky, and what I mean by it doesn't work, because it's another level of bureaucracy. So when I go and advocate for the primary school of Francis for this school bus or a school bus to pick up South Australian students, I now will have to and will work with a cross-border commissioner when they're implemented to try and solve this. Along on top of that, I have to then go and speak to the Minister for Education as well.
Wouldn't it be sort of helpful, though, to have a commissioner there whose role really is there to prevent these sorts of things happening, to have them sort of like an ombudsman in your corner on this one?
You're spot on, Ricky, so long as they work and do the role that they're meant to do. And that's where we don't have any guarantee. So it's going to be reviewed on I think it's like 3 year, there'd be a 3-year review. I think there has to be a report made once a year about the sort of roles and avocation that this commissioner has carried out. It's not that onerous. It was more onerous, and there were some amendments there that were made it way too onerous and too bureaucratic. They were watered down, and Troy Bell's amendments came along from Mount Gambier and helped streamline this process, and which I'd have to say I welcomed. And look, so long as I said, Ricky, that this cross-border commissioner sits in the role of not just a job for the boys, not just a government bureaucracy and another level of bureaucracy just in the way of good outcomes, but actually achieves some of the outcomes that we know that should be better along our border than what they are, then this process is going to work well. And that's all our concerns have been about. So it's about having faith in the bureaucracy, which I'm a little bit cynical. Sometimes it doesn't always work for the people. The people have to work for it. And secondly, to make sure that we find the right person that has got the kudos, the expertise and the diligence, and obviously not to sit back and watch the world go by while all these opportunities are begging to be solved.
Well, some of the amendments that were moved by the opposition in the upper house were to require the commissioner to reside in a border community and to have mandatory consultation with all levels of government and MPs in border communities. Did they get up, or have you got confidence those things will happen?
Look, there are some criteria about the way the process is meant to work. Certainly some of the amendments that were put forward by the opposition weren't picked up, and I have to say I'm pleased that they weren't. I think that there is enough in the legislation now that it will be protected by the fact that there will be a review, there will be reporting, just some sort of method and methodology to actually assess the way that this border commissioner is working and to make sure that it is working for the people that it's meant to. And look, I think I have confidence now, after all the legislation's gone through, after the amendments that Troy Bells have got through, that we will end up with a cross-border commissioner that can actually do this role, and it's now going to be interesting to see how it actually is implemented, who the person will be, and then also all the work that they're able to successfully carry out solving some of the cross-border issues that we know belong along our 5 borders.
Now, whether it crosses the border or not, health issues are common either side of the border, but particularly in the Limestone Coast. You were pretty positive about what Labor promised before the election in this Limestone Coast health pledge. I think it was $100 million they said they wanted to spend there, but Shadow Minister Ashton Hearn said recently not a skerrick of that has been put forward by way of spending. Have you got something closer to the ground in terms of what's been happening?
Look, all I'd say in this area, Ricky, is that, yes, Labor have come out prior to the last election. They wanted to spend $8 million on the Narracourt Hospital. They wanted to spend $1.5 million a year over 7 years at the Keith Hospital. And I think there was at least $30 to $40 million pledged to the Mount Gambier Hospital, and from mental health beds to a bigger emergency department and others. And look, all I can say is that when these promises were made, they were welcomed around the region if Labor were to get into power. They now are in power, and so it's going to be really interesting now to see how these funds are going to be utilised and what sort of areas they're going to capture. So, for example, Ricky, we spent about $3.5 million on the Narracourt Hospital in the 4 years the Marshall Liberal government was in power. Now we're going to see $8 million over the next 4 years by the Labor government, and we're yet to be seen, let to be determined where that $8 million is going to get traction. But I do know that the Narracourt Hospital, for example, is old, it's tired, it's 20 years past its use-by date. The roof leaks, there's buckets in the corridors when it rains. And we didn't address all this maintenance issue in the 4 years that we had the opportunity as a Liberal government. So it's actually pleasing and it's nice to see that there's further funding coming our way to the Narracourt Hospital, and we can fix up this ageing infrastructure that needs it. And also then thinking about the $30 or $40 million down at Mount Gambier, we know that all the Limestone Coast works together, and it's a major hospital precinct for the Limestone Coast. So the bigger, the better, the more facilities, the more services that Mount Gambier has to offer, I think the better off the Limestone Coast and perhaps even surrounding Western Victoria residents will benefit from that process.
Well, that sort of spending, I think, pledged during the election might have given the electors the view that some spending might happen soon. Even if it was $100 million pledge, you're looking at $2 or $3 million, even though it's only been 4 months. Probably should have been spent by now, even on things like buckets needed under roofs. Have we seen any spending from Labor to improve facilities in these last 4 months?
Look, you haven't, Ricky. I haven't, and to be fair, I wouldn't have expected it either, Ricky. That would be too long a bow to draw. That you're in government for the 4 years, and you've pledged this $100 million, as you call it, on health over the next 4 years. They've got dip-die, they've got contracts, they've got to go out and consult and get quotes and so forth on all this type of process design. And I don't expect. And one of the things I have learned, Ricky, is to have a very much more patient line in politics than I had in business, because nothing happens fast through this political system I'm in. And to expect anything on the ground at this stage, with after 4 months, is all I can say is too long a bow to draw. And I'm not criticising anyone at this stage. I certainly, after 2 years, would like to see something in progress by this stage, and by the end of the 4 years, I'd hopefully see it completed. There's not even a guarantee that those works will be completed, but at least they should be started. But 4 months in, Ricky, no, I don't expect to see too much at this stage.
Now, just lastly, you would have seen the correspondence, I believe, that Kingston Council tabled recently regarding Optus and SA Water and the water tower that they rely upon to transmit mobile coverage into the area. Some recent works meant the coverage had to go off for a while. Is there a case for a standalone tower so we don't need to put workers' health in jeopardy for SA Water?
Look, I think that Optus got caught out here, and they probably have some regrets about the way that this process worked. I have spoken to the area manager, a fellow called Rob Seymour, regarding this, and look, I've got some some extra information I'll add to it. First of all, obviously, the water tower has to be done up and maintained. It's done probably every 10 to 20 years. It's not something that happens annually. Because workers were working close to the network infrastructure on top of the tower, they had to switch it off. And what they then did was they put a mobile cell in place in the town, which was only around 15 metres high. But the other thing about this mobile cell that they put in the town to back up what used to be working on the water tower was only for 4G. So anyone who had an Optus phone or Optus infrastructure for all the shop and traders when they you do your automatic trading and so forth and cards and like, If they were on the old system, on the 3G system, then this tower didn't cater for them, and so it left them certainly high and dry, and they have regrets about that technology being too, obviously too recent a type technology for perhaps some of the ageing or older telephones and mobile telephones that people were using in the town around Kingston at that time. And the other thing, as I say, Ricky, is that we also did write off and send a letter to the Optus to make sure, to try and find out why they'd been, been left, these Optus clients had been left high and dry, and they admitted that they've made a sort of a mistake, didn't get onto it fast enough, and then the technology they did try to impose to try and rectify the problem wasn't probably sufficient for the older technology that was being used in the town at the time. And I also led to believe that the 15-metre portable tower did not give the coverage that the water tower and the permanent infrastructure that was turned off gave as well. So those that did have good coverage prior certainly didn't get the same coverage when they had the mobile tower there. So look, there's a few lessons in all this, Ricky. As I said, and I think Optus admit this, it could have been done better. With regrets, we got onto it, tried to fix it, we tried to work with the Kingston Council on this. And then another question that's been asked is, well, why would, do they have any infrastructure on this water tower at all if sometimes it could be turned off? Well, it's not something that happens annually or biannually. It is something that happens maybe every 10 years. I guess we're trying to roll out a mobile network on any sort of infrastructure we possibly can as far and as widely as we can. We know that these towers are expensive. There was obviously an opportunity to utilise the water tower for mobile telecommunications coverage. I don't think that in itself is a mistake. I think the mistake really is the backup that is required when the tower is undergoing this sort of maintenance, and to make sure that those that are on this system, the clients of Optus, or even if it was a Telstra piece of infrastructure, which it wasn't at this stage, is well backed up if that infrastructure then has to go undergo some sort of maintenance strategies like the Kingston Water Tower does.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's good to see levels of government pursuing that for local, ratepayers and voters. So I appreciate your feedback on that as well. Thanks for joining us today on Flow.
Always a pleasure, Ricky. Thank you very much.